Welcome back to the Future Self podcast.
I've had a big issue with alcohol, mainly the last 10 years, developed severely after I had kids. And I got into a vicious cycle of not knowing when to stop, how to stop, and using it just to numb all emotions, whether it was, excitement, anger, just not wanting to feel, just using it to get through. I didn't know how to not drink and live. So it became a huge challenge for me to, live every day without using alcohol to numb everything.
How long did it take for it to go from a outlet into a daily need, like a daily must?
I get asked this all the time, and it's hard to know where the crossover was there because it chips away at your life slowly in a lot of cases that you don't normally see or that crossover there. But then on the other hand, I've seen people, it happened really quickly for them, 1 or 2 3 years. So for me it was over a up and down over a 10-year period. I'd say my worst was, but it would go in stages, to be honest, for me, my experience, because it just wasn't an onward, it was a downward slope. But I would try and get help, and then I'd try and get sober, and I'd be in and out of rehab facilities and therapy and trying to figure out why I couldn't stop drinking. So for me, then I'd pull back, and then I'd put everything, like effort into training and other areas of my life to avoid, to balance it out, actually, just to balance out my drinking to my training or my working. So I was trying to cover it, to basically cover it up so it didn't look like I had so much of a problem. And, that doesn't last either. Eventually that just all comes crashing down, and, you're left with, well, where do I go from here? When everything that you tried or that you've been suggested to do wasn't working.
When did it go from something that was just like an occasional casual and like for then you to recognize and realize, no, fuck, it actually has a grip on me and it has a hold on me?
Because I couldn't go to bed at night. If I really think back to late 20s, even before I had kids, I would struggle to go to bed. I was scared. So I think just having the drink then before every afternoon or every night just took the fear out. So took the edge off so I could sleep. So if I look back there, that was the start of a big problem that I had no idea about. I didn't realise that that would become such a big problem down the track. But it's always, easier to look back and see what happened than when you're actually going through it. Because even if someone told me back then, this sort of drinking is going to lead you to here, I probably wouldn't have believed them, because I'm like, no way, that's not going to happen to me.
I read a quote the other day. The heart attack you have at 50 started at 20.
Yes.
The drinking problem you have at 60 started at 18. And it's that analogy comparison that exactly what you just said. It won't be me. It won't happen to me. All those stories you see of heart problems or diabetes or alcohol or deaths even stem not from the action when you're older, but from the occurrence of consistency over the course of your life. What was the feeling for you like to actually, before I ask this question, I fucking love that you started the episode off with not saying alcoholic or ex-alcoholic. And we'll dive into that later because it's a fucking big thing I do want to dive into. But what was the experience like for you to admit it was an actual problem? Because there's so many individuals these days, I would say from 18 to 30, that have a one-to-one alcoholic tendency or relationship with it, but because they're young, it's not a problem, or it's not viewed at from society as a problem. What was it like for you having to actually acknowledge, no, this is a problem and I do have a bad relationship with it and I need to go to rehab?
Obviously, initially, it's a scary, especially going to rehab. It was so scary. But it's a relief to know what the actual problem is. Because I spent so long thinking, oh, I just suffer some really bad anxiety and I don't cope, so I just drink just to manage my anxiety. And then that becomes a vicious circle. So I never really knew. I knew that I drank a lot and I knew that it helped me at the time with what I was experiencing, but I didn't realize that that was the main problem and making everything worse. So even if there was underlying anxiety, depression, or any issues or life issues, the alcohol makes it worse. So it gets the grip and it's the vicious cycle that it just grabs you. So I didn't actually realize that until I was told in my first rehab.
How'd you get to your first rehab though? Because you have to be aware of something to go to rehab, right? So what was the experience or moment of realizing, no, I actually need to go to the first rehab?